Our subject today, beloved family, and I pray Allah will bless me to be able to get through this. And I chose the subject because I really think, as I said a moment ago, that we have to immerse ourselves in the teachings. Because it is when we have a deep and profound understanding, not leaning on our own understanding, but an understanding from God Himself about what is. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because you're going to hear a lot about what is in the news, but you won't necessarily understand, well, why is that? And Almighty God Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, left us with a body of knowledge, wisdom and understanding that if we study and immerse ourselves in it, then where you have maybe 85% of the masses of the people totally and utterly confused about what's going on, we can be part of that 5% who know the truth of what's going on and not be fooled and hoodwinked and find ourselves running into walls because of ignorance. And so our subject matter today, beloved family, is entitled The Origins of Racism and Its Persistence. The origins of racism and its persistence. If we go to the dictionary, the meaning of origin is a point or place where something begins, arises, or is derived. In the dictionary, you've got synonyms and other ways of saying origins. And some of the ways you can say origin is beginning, start, origination, genesis, birth, dawning, dawn, emergence, inception, launch, creation, birthplace, cradle, early stages, conception, inauguration, foundation, outset. It's important that we understand what is the origin of racism, beloved, because it has a point of beginning. There was a starting point for this sickness that is now all pervasive within the society, within the world. The meaning of racism, according to the dictionary, is prejudice. And by the way, let me just stop there. The word prejudice, when broken down, it means to prejudge. That's right. Prejudice, to prejudge. So rather than having actual facts about a thing, you see something and immediately you make a judgment about it without any real knowledge. And believe me, a lot of people see black people and they've got opinions about us and they know nothing about us. Prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. It's a superiority idea that you have why you now want to point the finger at other people. The meaning of persistence. I'm just going to give two very simple dictionary definitions. The fact of continuing in opinion or course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition. Let me say that again. The fact of continuing in an opinion or course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition. That's persistence. Continuing course of action, difficulty, opposition. Yet, even though there is opposition to what you're doing or what you're saying, you continue, you persist. Continued or prolonged existence of something. Continued or prolonged. You know, this racism thing, beloved. You know, there's lots of people out there who tell you, man, there's loads of opposition against racism, but it persists.
That's right, yeah, that's right.
The origin of racism and its persistence. One of the latest news stories involving racism coming out of North America is about a Democratic governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam. And he has refused to resign from office following the emergence of a photograph from his 1984 medical school yearbook featuring a white man in blackface. You know, they used to do this black and white minstrel thing, alongside another man wearing a Ku Klux Klan robe. Do you remember Prince Harry wearing the Nazi?
Yes.
And I mean, it just goes on. What I'm saying is, if it's not one thing, it's another that you will see popping up with remnants of the so-called racist past. But the so-called racist past is present.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, lots of people are calling for this governor of Virginia to resign, as if a resignation is going to solve the reoccurring and persistent problem of racism. Here's a recent story from the UK. 6 men have been arrested and bailed by the Metropolitan Police in connection with the burning of the Grenfell Tower effigy on a bonfire. Stephen Bull, Mark Russell, Cliff Smith, Smith's son Bobby Connell and Paul Bussetti have all been arrested on suspicion of a public order offence. A 6th man, a teenager, aged 19, was also held by Met Police detectives before all 6 were released under investigation. A source told the Sun newspaper they were having an effigy competition, and obviously they took it way too far. It was just a little competition, who could build the best effigy, and it went too far. The person continues in the Sun. These are business owners and respectable adults. They are parents, for goodness sake. What they are being investigated for shows completely shocking judgment. So this was just a lapse of judgment. It wasn't endemic. Look, beloved, Brother Alvin went there. I hate the way these brothers sneak into my apartment and read my notes. But I'm really not interested in jumping on the Liam Neeson bandwagon. I'm only interested in breaking it down, utilizing the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Because all the commentators, beloved, from our brother Gary Young, who writes in The Guardian and was involved with the BBC at some level, and on the other side you got John Barnes. The problem is that they're lacking the fundamental knowledge, wisdom and understanding of the nature and the root of Liam Neeson's confession.
That's right.
This is what we want to get into, the root cause. And you know, a part of this confession, beloved, when you really think about it, it also is a demonstration of the sort of callous and debasing, insulting way in which black people are viewed.
That's right.
I'm talking about the confession itself.
That's right.
It's like there's a casual calculation that I can just say what I want to say anyway, because there are no real consequences. And I'm promoting a movie. And there is a philosophy among certain people that says there is no such thing as bad publicity.
That's right.
You understand? Because, you know, look at the amount of talk now around Liam Neeson and his new film and the whole concept of revenge and so on and so forth. So, during and after the interview, beloved, I'm saying to you that Liam Neeson knew exactly what he was saying. And he knew the potential fallout. Because he actually mentions in the interview that, wow, I'm telling this to a journalist. And then at the end of the interview, the journalist reports that Liam Neeson said to him, be careful, because I'll find you. And he said it in the voice that he used in the movie Taken. Be careful how you use it. I'll find you. Let's get some insight into the thinking of white people and the mindset of white supremacy, beloved. The mindset is not reserved to white people, by the way. Let's just get that clear. Okay, because there are plenty of black white people around. Yeah? Black skin, white mind. In a movie called Taken in 2008, the Irish actor Liam Neeson made a speech in a scene which became legend. This is what Stephen March of Esquire magazine had to say about the speech on January the 8th, 2015. The speech from the original taken 2008 was brilliant. It was brilliant in a way almost never seen in the movies. It was a classically structured piece of rhetoric, but this soliloquy was drained of comedy. There was no humor in it. He was deadly serious. Aristotle will have loved this speech. Aristotle, this is what the journalist is writing in Esquire magazine about the speech that Liam Neeson spoke in Taken. And I want you to understand, beloved, what you're reading here, what's being said here, because let me just read it. Let me just read it, because I could break out and just go into one. Tarantino-style soliloquy, but drained of comedy. Aristotle will have loved this speech, and it follows the same structure and uses the same techniques as two of the greatest speeches of the 20th century. Albeit one's much more important than what's found in a popcorn flick. Winston Churchill, "We shall fight on the beaches," and Martin Luther King Jr., "I have a dream." This is the comparison that they're making between Neeson's speech in the movie and Martin Luther King, "I have a dream" speech. And again, there is a belittling of the suffering of black people and where that speech came from. And Martin Luther King in that speech didn't just say, "I have a dream." Here's the speech. Let me do it in Liam Neeson's voice. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you're looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you let my daughter go now, that will be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you, and I will kill you. Now, so a speech by an actor using threatening behavior and threatening to kill is hailed as a classic rhetoric, albeit in an action movie. But brothers and sisters, there's something deeper going on here. I mean, what happened to Liam Neeson's fame and his ego and his prestige as a result? You got to understand that this thing goes through the roof. I mean, can you imagine how he felt when that movie hit and it became such a celebrated scene? You appear in all the talk shows all around the world. Everybody wants to know you. You are box office. Do you appreciate, beloved family, that Liam Neeson was and is typecast as the revenge killer and plays his roles very well? You could say he's a natural. But where does that natural revenge and killer instinct come from? You've all watched movies, and there's some actors, beloved, they could be playing a particular role, but you don't believe them. But when Neeson made that speech, you kind of like this, he sounded like, yeah, that sounded real. What was the result, beloved? With the furore behind that movie, what was the result at the box office? And what happened with that movie as a franchise? See, because there's been so many Takens now. There's nothing new in terms of worship of white action heroes. It's not new. They started all the way back from Charles Bronson and Death Wish and then you move into the Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry, you know, and this was a detective, Dirty Harry, who would take the law into his own hands. And he is then depicted and becomes like a so-called anti-hero. Yeah. Here's one of Dirty Harry's famous lines from a scene where he kills a suspect. Being as this is, a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? I just want us to think about, see, because we go to the movies, and as I speak, I want you to question whether you're a black, white person. Because many of us hero worship these people. And we don't actually realize that that same attitude towards the so-called punk criminal, or the persons on the other end of that phone with Neeson's statement, that's the same way they've been talking to us and treating us for years when we were innocent.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We live in a world, beloved, where ruthless, cold-blooded killers and sophisticated killers are celebrated with characters such as James Bond. You mentioned him. James Bond, beloved. License to Kill. Then we have the latest scandal involving Liam Neeson promoting his upcoming revenge film, Cold Pursuit. Did you hear what I just said a minute ago about cold-blooded? See, cold pursuit. This ain't somebody who's emotional. This is somebody who's now set out with cold, reptilian intentions. There's no feeling in this. These are cold-blooded things that are being promoted here. And obviously you've all heard that in the interview he admitted that he once fantasized about murdering a black man in retribution for the rape of his friend. He said, I went up and down areas with a kosh, hoping I'd be approached by somebody. I'm ashamed to say that, and I did it for maybe a week, hoping some black bastard would come out of a pub and have a go at me about something, you know, so that I could kill him.
What color were they? She said it was a black person. I went up and down areas with a kosh, hoping I'd be approached by somebody. I'm ashamed to say that. And I did it for maybe a week, hoping some black would come out of a pub and have a go at me about something, you know, so that I could kill him.
I'm going to come back to that word bastard in a while. It was horrible, horrible when I think back that I did that. And I've never admitted that, and I'm saying it to a journalist. God forbid, it's awful. But I did learn a lesson from it when I eventually thought, what the F are you doing, you know? In another interview, he said, because when that interview broke and, you know, all hell kind of broke loose in the media and everybody's talking, he then went and did more interviews where some people said he doubled down, not really backtracked, he doubled down on some of what he was saying, but in some other instances he was, of course, trying to make an excuse. In another interview he said, there were some nights I went out deliberately into black areas in the city looking to be set upon so that I could unleash physical violence. My response shocked me and it hurt me. I did seek help. I went to a priest. I aired my confession. I was reared a Catholic. I had two very, very good friends that I talked to, and believe it or not, power walking helped me. 2 hours every day to get rid of this. I'm not a racist. This was nearly 40 years ago. Well, I think a lot of things happened 40 years ago. A lot of things happened 400 years ago. Does it mean that because it happened so long ago that now somehow something has changed. Look, beloved, I could stand right here, right now, and give you a litany of situations that have come up just recently that demonstrate that racism and hatred of black people is alive and well in this world. And regardless of distance of time, it is all prevailing, all pervasive. In a part of the interview, he said what he did was primal. This is Liam Neeson's words. I ain't putting no words into his mouth. Primal. He said it was primal. Go to your dictionary, beloved. Primal means original, initial, early, earliest, first, primitive, primeval, primary. There's a word that they're trying to avoid in the definition, and the word is nature. Nature. It's psychology relating to or denoting the needs, fears, or behavior that are postulated, especially in Freudian theory, to form the origin of emotional life. Primal. This is something instinctive within the individual. Look, a couple of things spring to my mind. Neeson said, I grew up in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And a couple of my friends died on hunger strike. He talked about the revenge killings that went on during the Northern Irish Troubles. See, beloved, where is the mention of the obvious past IRA connections? You think that any of us could talk like that about, see, I grew up in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. See, and my friends died on hunger strike. Well, who are these who died on hunger strike? They were IRA. Right, what was your affiliation? Where's this mentality of murder and revenge come from? It's going a lot deeper, beloved. And the media, they ain't picking up on none of that.
That's right.
He talked about extreme violence associated with that time in his life growing up in Northern Ireland. He talked about, this revenge killings that were going on and how revenge breeds revenge and revenge, because he knew all about that. That was his life. And I don't know if you know, but I know you might think racism is bad in England. Some of you may have gone up to Scotland. You think racism is bad in Scotland. Some of you may have gone to Wales. You think racism is bad in Wales. Well, guess what? Racism in Ireland, Northern Ireland, is as bad, if not worse, than any of these places, beloved. This is real. So you imagine the young Neeson walking around during the Troubles. Black people were there, beloved. There were even black soldiers there. And what thought processes might he have had, and what actions was he taking against black people? Because again, you see, we hear constantly about 6 million Jews dying in the gas chambers during the Second World War under the boot of Hitler's Nazis. What we don't hear about are the black people who were also murdered by the Nazis. You understand? But we were being murdered just the same. And in fact, wiped out. Survivors in no concentration camps. Gypsies and other people of remote color. The slightest color. But you don't hear about these things, beloved. So Liam Neeson, 40 years after this incident, is talking about it to a reporter. Why do you have to say, I went out looking for a black bastard? Why couldn't you then say, because obviously you've reformed, you've changed, so why couldn't it have been a black person?
Yes, sir.
You may have thought black bastard at the time, but why do you have to use that term now?
Yes, sir.
Because it's still a part of you, man.
Yes, sir. Preach, brother.
And truth has a way of kind of slipping out.
Yes, sir.
Sad, beloved. Very sad. According to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and what his student, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, has taught us and is teaching us, Everyone, whether we're black, brown, yellow, or white people, every type of human being who's on this earth comes from the black man.
Yes, sir.
Every single human being on this planet, brown, yellow, or white, they need to get to know the black man. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says, because to know the black man is to know something of yourself. Talking to them. This is important. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says, historically, anthropologically, genetically, and biologically, no one on earth predates the black man. And we challenge any scholar, any scientist in this world to disprove that statement. They are here because we're here. If we weren't here, they couldn't be here. They came from us, beloved. We're asked in our teachings, who is the original man? And we give the answer. The original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, the God of the universe. What is Asiatic, beloved? Because that answer is very, very powerful. And as a people, you know, many of us think that we're learned because we went to school in America, we went to school in England, we went to school in the Western Hemisphere, we went to some Eurocentric educational facility. Yes. And so we think that what we've garnered as education is the end all and be all. But the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that the planet Earth, the entire Earth, beyond ancient antiquity, we called it Asia. That was the name that we as original people gave the planet, long before English and the term Earth. Long before all of these geographic boundaries that we now have, these labels which mostly have been given by Caucasians. Look, beloved family, Africa as a term, it's disputed by some, but we're saying that's not what we originally called it. That's why you go to the African continent, beloved, search through all the African indigenous languages, you won't find Africa in none of them. That's right. Some people try and do some mental gymnastics. Well, there's a word Afri and try, shut up. We never named it that. Somebody else did. And, you know, our teachings are not secret, beloved. What we teach is right out there. And black people, whether we really appreciate this or not, you know, when we use the term racism, it's a little bit of a misnomer, because do you know that we're not a race?
That's right.
We ain't a race, beloved. You do have a brown race. You do have a yellow race. You do have a white race. And in the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we're taught that they are a race of devils. And we're not embarrassed. We don't make no apologies for it, beloved. We can prove it at no limit of time. It's very, very important that we appreciate and understand, beloved, that our people in Africa today, many of our people in Africa today have been so divided against themselves that they still have what's called tribal loyalties above national loyalties and above what we term today Pan-Africanism. And our great brother Kwame Nkrumah, who was trying to encourage the United States of Africa. We have others who have pushed back against that continuously in the continent and abroad. And one of the reasons why Africa as a continent, and it is the greatest continent on the planet with the most resources, and according to Vladimir Putin in a recent statement, it's 1,000 times more powerful than Europe, but because of the lack of unity, then Africa remains in many parts of it like a basket case, and we can't compete with others who have adopted the idea of a unified process. So when Europeans, Caucasians speak, they talk about the United States of America. They remain divided, while the United States at least tries to have some semblance of a unified approach to foreign policy and economics and warfare. They're in the European Economic Union. Back in the day, it was the Soviet Union. See, white people, they're talking unity, man. But we like to talk about our divisions. Division and tribalism is rampant to this day in the motherland. And it prohibits us from being the mighty nation that both Marcus Messiah Garvey and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, "Up, you mighty nation. You can accomplish what you will." We are a nation, global nation, without borders. That's how we got to start thinking. But because we don't think like this, then we continue to be under other people. Europeans, beloved, they're very tribal. Very tribal. And you see little manifestations of it even in their football, and the football supporters with their colours and whatever. It's all tribalism. But what you'll find is that when push comes to shove, they will unite to deal with us. We won't do the same. We can be divided against ourselves to join forces with them to come against us. It's very sick, beloved. It's very sick. Their tribes, you got the Anglos, you got the Saxons, you got the Vikings, you got the Goths, the Visigoths, you got the Celts, you got the Normans, you got all the Germanic tribes. I mean, and on and on and on. But to see the way they operate, beloved, they come together because they have a vested interest in their own survival, beloved. I used to know some American military personnel in this country, and when they would refer to America, they would say, "Can't wait to get back to the world." They see America as the world. And I didn't really understand it. I understand it a bit better now. But in truth, you see, what they were demonstrating was still an idea. What is it that we sometimes have heard back in the day growing up? Oh, you think you're God's gift to the world. Well, they didn't think they're God's gift to the world. They think they are the world. That's my point. See, black people, we think so small. When in reality, I think it was Michael Jackson who was behind? We are the world.
Yes, sir.
That's who we are, beloved. We, if it wasn't for us, there would be none of this. And we got to change this thinking.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The Native Americans, beloved, their mistake as well was tribalism. Tribalism, beloved, whether it was Blackfoot or the Sioux or Cheyenne, the white man came in, rolled in, beloved, and he just exacerbated those divisions. The Mohicans, to some extent, he managed to usurp and bring the Mohicans in with him. That's why you see I think even one of their football teams, I think the mascot was a Mohawk axe or something like that. There is a lack of knowledge, beloved family, that is preventing us from evolving into the great people that we are and that we must B. Africa is not the only place for black people. We have settled all over the planet. Do you know that when Europeans, who are very relatively new people on the planet, do you know that when they went into new places, everywhere they went, they found us? Everywhere they went, they found us, or they found signs that we left, that we were here. You've seen those signs where people do those little graffiti things. John was here. Kenny was here. Tagging. Yeah, we left those things all over the planet, beloved. We were the original in China. Do you believe me?
Yes, sir.
We're the original Chinese, beloved. Japanese, Korea, Russia, Europe, the Americas, Australia, Fiji, New Zealand, Indonesia, the Middle East, Isles of the Pacific, the North and South Poles, beloved. Not just Africa. We're original everywhere. We arrived in North America before Columbus.
Yes, sir.
That's why when they came and they saw the heads of the Olmecs, Jesus, big black heads of black people, beloved. We left our signs everywhere. There's an argument today that rages among black people. Are we African? Are we African American? Are we Caribbean? Are we black British? It's a demonstration of a lack of knowledge of self. That's the problem. You know, this man, Yaqub, oftentimes when we hear about Yaqub, they always say, oh, he's a mad scientist, or he was evil. There's nowhere in the teachings where we call Yaqub mad, or where we call him evil. Yaqub was a god. And he was a great black scientist, beloved, this man Yaqub. And he was born according to what we're taught by the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He was born with a determined idea. The determined idea didn't come from Yaqub. The determined idea came from the originator of the heavens and the earth, who determined that one would be born with that idea. Yaqub didn't have nothing to do with it. Have you heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan when he speaks to us sometimes and he says, I am not before you of myself? We don't appreciate that the minister is a sent man. He was predicted, he was born from his mother's womb, and he was a thought in the mind of God long before he came into physical existence. Same thing with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And guess what? Same thing with many of us in this room. If we come into the recognition and the realization that we are born to do a work, all praise is due to Allah. All praise is due to Allah, beloved. It's not a lightweight thing. We're dealing with the origins of racism and its persistence. And Sigmund Freud. And in one of his works, he theorized that the white man suffers from something called the Kronos complex. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan breaks this down in part 28 or 27 or 28 of the time and what must be done. And the term Kronos comes from Greek mythology, wherein one of the many strands of the myths of Greek mythology states that Kronos is a titan. Seen the titans depicted. He's a titan, the son of Uranus, representing the sky, and Gaia, representing earth. This son, Kronos, takes rulership of the world by castrating and killing his own father, and then continues a dictatorial, vicious and murderous rule of the world by the consumption of his own children, until finally his own son Zeus dethrones him. This is Kronos. I'll give you a simple definition of what we're talking about. A simple definition of the Kronos complex is a person or people fixated on the idea that it is their right to rule by any means necessary, even if that means killing and castrating your own father and making war with anyone that you perceive to be a threat to your continued rule. This is the condition that white people suffer from. The Kronos complex.
That's what we want to suffer from.
But they were given the right to rule for a time. Caucasian people or white people were manufactured, produced, bred into existence through a process of overindulgence in the sex act. Some of us don't understand why we live in a world which is just dominated by sex. You know, most civilized people, we try to pretend that we don't see it. But believe me, beloved, every advert, don't you sometimes wonder to yourself, how can you be selling Bisto? And you somehow manage to wangle in sex into it. You're selling a car, you're selling a washing machine, but there's a naked woman on the boot of on the trunk of the car, whatever. I'm saying, sex, beloved. We did touch on this recently in one of our talks, that it is the process by which all of us are here. But understand that when Yaqub put his plan into action, it was about a lot of sex in order to produce his new people. And so it's not an accident that there is a lot of sexual machinations by them. And, you know, like I always wonder, you know, like there's what's that actor's name? What's his name? Mad One. The postman always rings twice. There's one, The Shining. Jack Nicholson. There was a film that came out, and they had this, and they were talking about a scene in the film where apparently he has sexual relations with a woman on a table in a kitchen or something like that, and people were going crazy, like, oh, it's such a fantastic scene. And then there was another film that came out when Sally met Harry or something like that, and some woman was talking at a table in a restaurant, and it's like she was having an orgasm when she was talking. And then there was another set of things that came out, a thing called Shades of Grey or something like that, and it's 60, and everybody's going mad. And look, below, and, you know, at a certain point in time, I get to a point where I say to myself, okay, all right, you're depicting this thing. How many more ways and times are you going to depict this, and I'm going to be supposed to be getting excited? Not excited, beloved. It's the same story. Man meets woman, and nowadays it's not even man meets woman. I'm watching an advert the other day, and I see two men falling down one another. This is the advert. When my children are in the room, small children, I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, man, dropping down on one another. But this is what was bred. So that I'm saying this because when you criticize them, understand what you're criticizing. When you become emotionally charged by what you see, understand that if you knew the origin and the reason, you wouldn't necessarily upset yourself like that. You would just take precautions to make sure that what they do doesn't affect you to the best of your ability and your family. Do you see what I'm saying, beloved? The law that was laid down by Yaqub, he got 59,999 people, original people, to go with him. And the law that was laid down, beloved, stated that those people that were going with him, they had to be healthy, they had to be strong, and they had to be good breeders. And they had to marry at age 16. There was a doctor, and the doctor, he examined the potential couples. And what the doctor had to do, he had to pretend that it was a blood examination. In America, it's pretty standard that when you want to get married, you have a blood test, and I guess it's to see whether you've got hepatitis, you've got AIDS, whatever, so you're healthy basically. But the doctor in the time of Yaqub, his job was to not examine the blood, but his job was to look at whether or not the people matched according to color. What do you mean by that, Brother Leo? We're all black people in this room. But if we all stood up right now and put our hands together, you will see that even though we're all black, we are all different shades. And the idea of Yaqub's process was to marry the unlike to the like. Not to have two black people together, but one had to be lighter, and then the offspring from that, ultimately, there'd be differences, and then you marry the lighter onto the lighter, and you would eliminate the black as you went forward. That was the purpose of the doctor. Make sense? They had to disallow the dark one, the black one, and marry the light. After the doctor was a minister, the law for the minister was that he would only marry on alike. Only marry the unalike. So you're constantly looking for that lighter with the darker to keep coming lighter and lighter and lighter, and not allow any type of black to get through. The law for the nurse was that as soon as the baby was born, depending on whether it was light or dark, the nurse had to lie or to trick the mother. If the baby is dark, tell the mother that it's an angel baby and that the baby died, using deception and then stealing the baby away from the mother and telling her that it's gone to heaven to prepare a place for the mother. And by the way, if you want to know where this idea of dying and going to heaven comes from, that's where that began. And today, most black people, we're the ones who hold on to that. Like there's a place that we're going to go after we're dead. That comes directly from Yaqub's teaching to the nurse. The murder of the baby, often the nurse was trained to stick a needle in the brain of the baby and keep the light baby safe. And finally, the nurse had to hand the dead child over to the cremator, or sometimes it would be fed to wild beasts. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that in that process you've got lying, you've got murder, and you've got stealing, going into the process of making these people. That's what was being produced, beloved. On the island of Patmos or Pilan, this is where you have the start of race. We're dealing today with the origin of racism and its persistence. Race began on that island. The first race that we produced was a brown race. After 200 years of this process initiated by Yaqub, we got a brown man coming out of the original black man. That process continued for another 200 years, and from that we now have what's called a yellow man coming out of the brown man. It continues for another 200 years, and from that yellow man we produce a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Caucasian. That's the last stage, and that was the last race.
Can I ask a question? How come their hair straight? Because you know what, yeah, I was thinking, dude, was it the black people they just wanted their hair that dark Indian looking man?
No, when you say how comes their hair is straight, who are you talking about?
Like,
The other races? Well, you know, with the Caucasian, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that he is weak-boned, weak blood. And whether we appreciate it or not, that lank hair that just hangs down, it's not vital. It's not full of vitality. It's been bleached of energy and electricity and the essence of vitality. That's why it hangs down and it's lank and limp like that. You will find that with the brown man and the yellow man, it's not so dead. It's still got a kind of spring in it and a certain amount of life in it, and because it's black, it contains energy. But it's a good question. Look, beloved, the result of the process employed in the making is also the origin of anti-black racism practiced by brown, yellow, and white. Believe me, you got some real brown racists who don't like black people, because that same teaching that went into the white man, the final stage, went into them, just to a lesser degree, only for 200 years. And then the yellow man, he got it for 400 years. But the Caucasian, he got the full dose. So this manifestation of global anti-black racism is practiced to its most virulent extent by the white man, by white people. It is important, beloved family, to note that races have beginnings and endings. That's why we don't have no beginning, we don't have no ending. We ain't a race, beloved. The black man is from beginning and is to the end. Wherever the end is, we're going to be there. We have no beginning and we have no ending. We have to stop fretting about somebody being able to bring an end to us. Can't be done. Can't be done. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us, that the black man has inbuilt a fail-safe that we can't destroy ourselves. We can't even destroy ourselves. Yeah, Brother David reminds us that our brother Bob Marley said, "I have no fear for atomic energy, for none of them can stop the time." You know, people are frightened, oh, they might explode a nuclear device. Let me tell you something, beloved. The explosion that was initiated by the scientists 66 trillion years ago makes the Hiroshima and Nagasaki explosion like a damp squib. Those explosions at Hiroshima and Nagasaki were like a grain of corn popping to make popcorn, compared to the explosion 66 trillion years ago, which separated a part of the planet. 36,000 miles it was blown into space, and this part that we're on fell 12,000 miles out of its orbit. And we're still here. That's the point. And the earth is still here. All praise is due to Allah. They have delusions of grandeur that they can, you know, that you hear them boasting, we can destroy the planet how many times over. Be quiet, man. You ain't destroy nothing but yourself. The Caucasian's leaning and inclination is towards evil. This is real. Again, if you're just an emotional person, then, you know, oh, why are white people like this? White people, why? You know, I hear our people all the time. I see them online, on social media, crying about white people. And I'm saying, stop it. They can't help it. It's like these people, they bring the dog into their living room. And they train the dog, right? They tame the dog. And then on the news, every now and then, the story comes out. Dog eats baby. And then you see them on the news crying, oh, he was such a good dog, I don't know what. No, I can tell you why. The dog's nature is to bite. And even though you have trained that dog, there may come a time when the dog's nature will just kick in, and he'll get tired of that child pulling his ear, and the dog will do what dogs do and do some biting. People got pit bulls and Rhodesian Ridgebacks and all kinds of crazy dogs, Doberman Pinschers in their rooms with their children, beloved. And every now and then you see that dog shows you his teeth and you think he's smiling. He ain't smiling, beloved. Dog ain't smiling. Dog is thinking, boy, one of these days. His leaning, his inclination, it doesn't mean that when you have a leaning or an inclination, it doesn't mean that you have to go with it, beloved. But Mr. Yaqub, according to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Mr. Yaqub fed that inclination. That inclination, by the way, being something that was found in the original man. So let's not get it twisted now. The Caucasian is not self-made. But Yaqub looked within the original black man, and when he looked at the life germ of the black man, he noticed that there were two germs in us. A black one of pure positivity and a brown one of negativity. And Yaqub determined that he would separate them. And from the brown one, he would build or produce an honor-like man. And that's what he did, beloved. And Yaqub fed that brown germ inclination toward murder, lying, stealing, and a system of tricks and lies that would enable the new man to master the original man, the original people of the earth, until the coming and presence of God that would be seen in the great Mahdi, who would come, and with him the Messiah. We are telling the world today that the Messiah that the whole world is looking for is the most honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
And we challenge. Remember what I said before, beloved. All praise is due to Allah. Remember what I said before. We can't be standing on no sidelines cheering the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in no showdown. The showdown is involving us too. And we've got to bear witness to the majesty of the coming of God, the Mahdi, and the one who is with him, the Christ, the Messiah, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we've got to bear witness that this man who is currently running around visiting nations and making confessions about sexual abuse within the church, and he's labeled the Pope and the Vicar of Christ, that he is not the Vicar of Christ, but the Vicar of Christ is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. All praise be to Allah. This is real, beloved. The Vicar of Christ ain't no apologist for pedophilia, beloved. Hear me well. Vicar of Christ ain't no apologist for the abuse of women, whether they are nuns or women from the street. The Vicar of Christ is a raiser of women, is an upholder of the divinity of the female, of the sacredness of the woman, whether she's black or white. All praise is due to Allah. And so, beloved, in conclusion, doesn't time fly when you're enjoying yourself? Understand this, beloved. It's very, very important. It's critically important. It's not doesn't have to be a long, drawn out, doesn't have to be, black people always fall for this nonsense where people stand up in front of us and talk a whole bunch of nonsense and stupidness. And the more stupid and foolish it is, we say, yeah, boy, that deep, that deep. Because I can't understand it. Boy, deep, that deep. No, beloved. Did you know that Almighty God Allah is not the author of confusion? Do you know that there are many of our people who have become so intellectualized that they think the teachings is nonsense because it's so simple? God makes it plain. The author of confusion is Satan. All praise is due to Allah. When somebody talks to you, beloved, and you are left confused, you just met Satan. When somebody makes it so plain that a child could understand it, maybe you have heard from the voice of God. Take it or leave it, beloved. In 1974, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan reminds us the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's final message to the believers and to the world. He said, we didn't raise you to be mockers of anybody. Because the white man could easily tell us, I didn't make myself. You made me. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked the question, who is responsible? The potter or the clay? Any of you drink out of cups at home? Any of you use saucers and plates at home? Did those saucers and plates make themselves? There's somebody responsible, beloved. You find that you don't like the design of that plate and you cuss in the plate. Stop it, beloved. Go and look for the maker of the plate. If you've got an argument with somebody, that's who's responsible. The Caucasian is only doing what he was born to do. And the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that we can't reform devil. But Almighty God Allah is the beneficent and the merciful. The oft returning to mercy. Do you know what that means, beloved? That we always give the Caucasian an opportunity to find his way out. And that if he would submit his will entirely to do the will of God, if he would embrace that Holy Quran and live a righteous life, he could get an extension of time. But you know, I'm not talking about the masses here. According to scripture, some of them will be in the hereafter. Yes, beloved. Because guess what? Some of them will do good. You know what's really sad, beloved? We live in a world today where there are many Caucasians. I want you to hear me well. There are many Caucasians whose leaning is to the left. And guess what? They walk every day of their life leaning to the right. They go against their own nature and do righteousness. The black man whose nature it is to lean to the right. He walks every day of his life leaning to the left, going against his own nature and doing evil. So don't be foolish today and think that just because of the color of somebody's skin. Test the spirit. Test the spirit, beloved. And listen to what's coming out of people today and watch their moves. Because some of them, they are absolutely trying to do the right thing. I'm not talking about no majority here. And I'm not telling nobody to go and follow them. But what I am saying, beloved, is that Master Farad Muhammad is a product of both people for a reason. Because he comes to give justice to both. To both. And for some black people, that's very, very upsetting. What? They don't deserve no justice. No, beloved. That's like us becoming like them. No, we are the original man. We are the judge. We are the ones who can judge based on freedom, justice, and equality, regardless to creed or class or color. That's what we stand on. That's the platform we stand on. We are not about the Liam Neeson mentality of revenge. These people have done so much wickedness on the planet. Beloved, the scripture is clear. As you have sown, so shall you also reap. It's written. There is no escape. But you don't have to go out there and go and get no machete. No, you don't have to be Dirty Harry. You don't have to take the law into your own hands. What you have to do is apply the law to yourself. All praise is due to Allah. Praise is due to Allah. That was the purpose, beloved, of us producing an enemy for ourselves.
Yes, sir.
Think about it. The wisdom of the black man. Because you can tell black people all day long, brother, sister, you got a demon inside of you. Yeah, right, yeah. But Yaqub brought the demon out so that we could see and experience a part of ourselves. That the black germ must never allow to raise its head again.
Yes, sir. Teach. Yes, sir.
But we wouldn't have never have known unless it was released, given form and function. And so in conclusion, the enemy's function, according to that which we are taught, was to manifest the imperfection of self, that God could set into force now the cure and set us free from the weakness of ourselves. Racism, beloved family, is a phenomenon in the world which comes from the making of the Caucasian. It all went into his nature. It's his nature to be a racist. He can't help it. Everybody condemning Liam Neeson. He was just telling you the reality of what comes out of them when they get a little stressed. It doesn't need a lot. What Liam Neeson did was what tens of thousands of white people have done throughout the history of our sojourn among them, when they would manufacture, many times it would be manufactured, they would manufacture a charge of rape against a black man. Then a mob, a lynch mob, would go to the police station and take the black man out, and many of the lynchers would be the police themselves. They would facilitate the lynching. And we died, beloved, wholesale under that type of system where black people were wrongfully accused. And we would just die. And Liam Neeson, he said it was primal. It was instinctive. He got that, the lyncher came up again. And he thought, yeah, a whole week he's walking, looking for a black man. And I guarantee you, when he was walking and looking for black men, he saw black men. But he's such a damn coward. He didn't have a mob with him. See, because it's one thing to go in a mob. It's another thing to confront a black man by himself. And man on man, come on then. You can talk like you're some kind of bad man in Taken. Any of you remember the movie, The Green Mile?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's a movie that made me cry. Do you know why I cried in that movie? Because that black man, and by the name, his name was John Coffey. Jesus Christ. JC. And John Coffey in The Green Mile was not an individual. John Coffey was the story of the black man living under the rule of the Caucasian. Wrongfully accused, innocent, but murdered anyway. So you got the Caucasian standing there, the executioners. When Coffee is being murdered, they're crying. But they got no power to stop the machine of murder, which is not about the electric chair, because the electric chair didn't make itself. It is about the mindset that made an electric chair in the first place, and then gave the electric chair power and said, there's nothing we can do to stop the process. The phone hasn't rung. The governor hasn't pardoned him, so we gotta go ahead. So our brothers and sisters continue to be murdered because of the Caucasian's fear that his race has come to an end. All races have a beginning and have an ending. He knows this. And now he's trying desperately to survive beyond the time of his race, which cannot be done. The scripture says, in that day, I shall make all things new. We're in the time now, beloved family, of a renewal process, where the black man, the original man, is once again to take our rightful place, because we are the only ones on this planet who can give justice to the planet. We're the only ones qualified to give justice to white, yellow, and brown. We're the only ones, because of our unique suffering over that protracted period of time that we've lived under the rule of this demon that we produced. But he was produced for our own learning, for our own growth and development.